Welcome to the Stotzy Sports Podcast, everybody. And in this episode, I will be interviewing legendary Heisman Trophy winner and two-time national champion Gino Torretta. Thank you so much, Mr. Toretta. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, Jacob. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you. So you've had quite the remarkable career as I can tell. You're from Pinole Valley, California, and you went to Pinole Valley High. And I saw that you really played amazing there. And out of California, you decided to go to the University of Miami, but you had other offers. What made you choose the University of Miami over all the other schools that you had offers from?
Um, I thought I played well to get a lot of offers, but I had Washington State was my other offer to the University of Miami. I really wanted to go to Stanford because I knew what their degree was worth and their education was worth. They weren't exactly the best in the football realm. But my brother Jeff had come to Miami for 2 years and backed up Vinny Testaverde. Um, he had a great experience, even though he only got a chance to start one game. And when I came on my recruiting visit to Miami in December, would have been January of 1987, my senior year of high school, or January of '88. So it was my senior year of high school, and it was the weekend they were celebrating the University of Miami's 1987 national championship with a ticker tape parade in Miami and all the things that go along with that. And I was like, I want to be a part of this. You want to win as being in a team and I just I couldn't say no, even though Gary Stevens, who was the offensive coordinator and friendly with my brother because he coached my brother, told me uh, not to come to the university because he thought that I could go to a Pac-10 school back then, which became a Pac-12 school, which now there's not even a conference. I could go to any one of those schools and start as a freshman. And he said, if you come here, you're only going to get an opportunity to start 1 year. And I obviously I would looked, but I was in his office, and the last four quarterbacks were on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and they just won, let's see, the second national championship, and I was like, I don't care if I just start 1 year. I think if that's the year and we win a national championship, I'm good, and so I picked the University of Miami.
Yeah, it's a great choice. And sorry, I thought I looked, I used AI and it said you got more offers. I'm sorry about that. That's my fault. I should have double checked. So I believe you played under Coach Dennis Erickson and Jimmy Johnson, right?
Correct. Jimmy recruited me, was here my freshman season. And then in I think in February of that year, the year after the season, in the spring semester, that's when he went to the Dallas Cowboys, and then Dennis Erickson came in. Um, I don't think anybody knew who Dennis Erickson was but me because Dennis Erickson recruited me to go to Washington State, and if I didn't go to Miami, I would have gone to Washington State. So I knew Coach E, I knew the whole staff, I knew the system he ran, and and then even made sure that my some of my teammates stuck around because I knew that he was a very good coach, and I knew we'd win a lot of games with his offense.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I mean they were both very good coaches. I guess if you feel comfortable sharing this, is there any like intimate or like secret sort of moment that you had with Dennis Erickson and Jimmy Johnson that's memorable that the general public may not know about?
I would probably say a lot more with Coach E than Coach Johnson. I think with Coach Johnson as let's see, I got here when I was 17 years old, and I was scared to scared to death of him. Scared of walking by his office, or because you're redshirting, or I was redshirting, and you're not really, you don't think you're contributing much to the team. And Coach Off Johnson was always on us about, getting good grades and all that. It was like you had you didn't want to disappoint your parents or your dad, and I think that, but there was no doubt he was, one of the greatest motivators that I've ever been around, because I think that just in that season, I learned that, based on how we prepared and his game planning and how they prepared, there wasn't a doubt we were going to win, every single game there when we stepped on the field, and that's I think that's an amazing trait, and I think obviously with Coach Erickson, um, you know, the what I loved is, as I became more experienced, in playing, um, Coach Erickson didn't have a problem with me, changing the play, audible in a play, doing any of those things, and I think that, what he did was he taught the game, and then, okay, go out there and make the decisions, But I remember he said, you can change any play you want, just make sure it works. So, I knew I could audible and just make sure that the play would work. So, I think some people say, well, that would be pressure, but, I mean, I was as well prepared as any quarterback, in college back then, and I think that was something where he let us, go out there and play and have fun, and really to continue, what we had been doing under Coach Johnson, because the defense stayed the same. I mean, our staff, the Dennis's new staff, learned the defense from basically the players and a couple of the GAs that they kept. They learned all the new terminology, and basically that became, it still stayed as our defensive package. And then basically the only thing we changed was a one back, offense that was more balanced. I guess when he got there, by the time I left, we threw a lot more my senior year, just because of our personnel challenges probably up front. We couldn't run the ball as successfully as we'd like. Um, but no, it was great playing for both of them.
What personnel packages were you running at that time? Was it more like 12, 13, would you
Uh,
say, or was it?
well, with Coach Johnson, it was all pro style, so it was one tight end, two backs. Then at times, like, I guess our get more athletes on the field was take the tight end out, have three wide receivers, and still have the two backs in personnel. Um, and then with Coach Erickson, it was three wides always, one tight end and one back. So, either combinations, it was either trips, or we call it a double formation, where the tight end and Z were on one side, and the X receiver and the tailback in that offense, who was our slot receiver, and then one back in the backfield. And then, we ended up, by my senior year, because of, the depth of our receivers, we went a lot more what we called spread, and just took the back out, and it was four wide receivers and a tight end. And I went back and shotgun most of the time when my senior year, when we went spread. So it became four wides, um, with one tight end and no backs.
Yeah, that's amazing. And obviously all the coaches knew what they were doing, and it really helped you, and you had so much success there, and you won, like, if I'm not mistaken, every award that you could win as a college quarterback, right? Almost every one, if not every one.
I
Um,
Yeah, yes, I won all the awards, and but I think college football, or football in general, is the greatest team award or team sport you can play. I think it's so many things have to, go right for everybody, for anybody individually to win an award on a team. And I think that I had some great players around me. I mean, our defense was unbelievable. My last 2 years, and we only lost the one game at the end.
Yeah, and which one of those awards was like the most honorable award for you to win and why?
Well, the Heisman is the biggest, and I think it's probably the most recognizable award in all of sports. I think, in probably in our society, even people that don't follow football know what the Heisman Trophy is. And I think that was, the you become part of a fraternity of great players that all had that season, um, and we were all around the same age doing it. And I mean, I'll take Winky out of that. I'll just because of he went pro baseball first and then came back to Florida State. But we were all essentially kids, and had a great season, and then you realize just how special the award is, and the relationships you build with other winners, and hearing their stories of what they went through playing. I from meeting Jay Berwanger, the first winner from the University of Chicago. They don't even have a football team at the University of Chicago anymore. Joe Bellino was one of my favorites from the Naval Academy in 1960, and I can remember talking to Joe one of the first times and asking him about the NFL, and he was like, Gino, I didn't go to the NFL out of college. I had to go to the Vietnam, and I was on a cork boat, basically sweeping a bay of mines, trying to keep our ship safe. And it's just you realize the history that we've all had, and that, but now you're all kind of one group of guys.
Yeah, no, that's a great story. It seems like you met the greats. You were great, obviously. And you had a career in the NFL. And from what I understood, when you had the opportunities, you made the most of it. But do you think that if you had more of a chance to play, because you kind of were behind some good quarterbacks, do you think if you had a chance to play, get more playing time, that you could have had a really good career in the NFL also?
I think so. I think I think that I came in to the league when free agency kind of just was getting started, and players were able to move, and move teams, and I think that the tough part about quarterback is only one guy can play, and if the starter doesn't get hurt, nobody else plays. And I think if you go back and look at my 5 years in the NFL, um, Marino didn't get hurt much. Steve Young maybe a little bit because I signed with the Niners because he got a concussion. Aikman didn't. You had a bunch of Hall of Famers. Warren Moon, who I played behind. Jim McMahon, I played behind. And I think that I feel confident if I'd had more opportunities. I got a chance to play in one game with the Seahawks, and we ended up winning the game, and that's really the goal of why you play. So yeah, I would like to think that if I got more opportunity to play, that things would have been longer in the NFL, but that is what it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, still had a great college career, and I think they made the Miami rule after you guys played FSU one time because they didn't like what you were doing in the locker room. Is that, do you remember that?
Well, I don't know if it was us in the locker room. I think it was us during when we were playing and beating the hell out of other
Yeah.
teams, and having fun, and basically just I'd say being kids. I mean, guys would make plays and dance and high five, and we weren't taunting the other team, but the officials did. Or I don't know, the rules makers. I don't figure out to say the establishment did not like that. Who are these kids that, I mean, think the University of Miami is, 100 years old. And, then it was 70 years old. Well, Michigan's probably, I think, 200 years old. I mean, it's double I mean, you had blue bloods that were double the age of the University of Miami, and all of a sudden you got, a bunch of, I'll say the majority of it were African American kids that, out there playing, having a good time, dancing, and they're like, who the hell are these guys? They're taking over college football because we had, I mean, Miami won the national championship in '83, won again in '87. Uh, got screwed, should have won in '88 on a bad call in Notre Dame. Won again in '89, 1990. In today's game, we would have made the playoffs and kicked the ass of anybody in the playoffs. But we lost two games early in the season, and that's what happens. That's why the regular season is the best in college football, is it means something. And 1991, we won the national championship. In 1992, we lost the national championship. So, to go 55-5 and to be Alabama before the Alabama, under Nick Saban, that's what we were. And people didn't like it. People didn't like how we had fun. And, Lamar Thomas, one of my teammates, with good friends, he would, we catch a touchdown. He'd always take off his helmet. And, so then they made the rule you couldn't take off your helmet on the field, and, you couldn't dance or celebrate or whatever. And I always took it as, you get a chance to play a game, and you're going to play. We played 55 games in my 5 years, or 60, sorry, 60 games in my 5 years. You don't get that chance. You only get 60 opportunities to go out there. I don't understand why you couldn't just go have fun. You're not doing it in the other team's face. You're just, hey, you're expending your energy and having a good time doing it. And but they did. They came out with the rules. These are things you can't do, and it was the video. I remember watching that. I think that came out in 90. I'm trying to think that was 91. It was either before my junior. No, I think it was my senior year. It was before 92 season. But we they came in with a VHS tape. You young people don't know what a VHS tape is, but that's how they played videos. Put a VHS tape in from the rules committee, and it was, if I say it was 100 plays, it was 99 plays of Miami. And it was like, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And so we got a good chuckle in the meeting, but yeah, they created the Miami rule.
Man, that's crazy. Um, After your career, did you ever think about coaching, or that never really crossed your mind?
You know, I did not, not a lot. I remember, probably the closest, I remember talking to Coach Coker and Rob Chudzinski, who I played with. He was one of my tight ends. He was a little bit, couple of years older than me in Miami. He was then offensive coordinator here at Miami. And I remember talking to them about being the quarterback coach. Um, and I was interested, and I don't know. Chud says I could have had the job if I wanted it. I thought I would just be, after I interviewed, I thought there was, then okay, then you make a formal offer. That was just kind of my thing, and we didn't. I guess we didn't visit it anymore after sitting down with Coach Coker and Chud. So, but that was kind of the closest I've got. I've volunteered a little bit at Gulliver when my daughter went to high school, and I love that. And I love broadcasting the game, and you know, um, seeing. I think it's a very, not very, but I think it's a simple game. It's 11 on 11 every day you play it. There's going to be only a few ways the defense can line up to your offense, and you have to figure out the best ways to attack that. And I think that if you as a quarterback, like, if you can simplify it down to that, where do I have that advantage? That's, you're going to win a lot of games. And I think that, I mean, I'd love to go back and maybe do it and teach these kids what I know. Cause I think that, for all the experience of great coaches, and I think that any coach that played has a different perspective of teaching it and playing it and can convey those differences, when they're a coach and they've also been, a player at a high level.
Very interesting. And is your daughter, she's in college now, or is she
She's go
graduated or?
Yeah, she's going in her senior year at Wisconsin and Madison.
Awesome. Wow. Yeah, it seems like you have a very smart family because that's a good school. And I know after your playing career, you worked at Wachovia Securities, and you had a financial role. How were you able to make that adjustment from like football to that as well as you did? And like, what advice would you give to young football players who maybe, didn't make generational money in the NFL and need to get into the real world?
You can make generational money in college now.
Yeah.
So make it in college too. But no, I mean, it was get your degree first. That was always my goal. I graduated, Miami in 3.5 years, um, and then had been doing master's work, my last year and a half. Um, so I think and that was a business degree, and then when I started learning about the investment business, I basically I think I did it more out of trying to make sure that I didn't become a story that we see all too often with athletes and a investment person taking advantage of them and them not having money when they're done after they've made a significant amount. And and then when I got done playing, I started working at it was Prudential Securities in, which became Wachovia Securities, which became Wells Fargo Advisors, and then I left there, and I've been at Gabelli Asset Management ever since, but in more of a institutional role. So I work with large union pension funds, cities, municipalities, in being an asset, one of their equity managers on a big portfolio of a pension plan and that. But my advice is get the degree and make sure you stay vigilant at that. I think that's one thing that is lost in today's, with the transfer portal. And listen, I understand, and you're going to transfer and you make a lot of money doing it, but there's some kids that have transferred 3 times, and I can't imagine that they're closer to graduation, on the third transfer because I don't know, back when I was in college, I think that if you looked into transfer and not all your credits would work towards a degree from the school you were going to. And it's very important because even if you have a long career in the NFL, let's say you play 10 years, you're still going to be 33 and you have more of a life after that than during it. So, you have to be prepared for that, and you're going to have to do something. And it's just a matter of, what that is. If you've become, if you have generational wealth, then I guess what you have to do is go play golf or do whatever. You start up. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs now in the world, and private equity and things like that, which is great to see with athletes getting involved with team ownerships and things like that. But no, I think the education is first and foremost, and get that degree and then lean on it because you're going to need it when you're done.
Yeah, those are great points. Speaking of the transfer portal and NIL, do you think it's good the way it is, or like with NIL in the portal, or do you think it needs regulation, or and why either way?
Well, I think there needs to be some sort of rules that are followed. I think in what's going on now, it seems like whatever rules are tried to be instilled, um, the universities or the programs don't necessarily look at it as, okay, this is what we have to follow. I think it's more of, okay, how do we get around this and not get in trouble? Um, so I think there's got to be some kind of teeth and enforcement rule. Um, and I don't know what that looks like or how they can put the genie back in the bottle because I understand listen, if the transfer portal was here when I was playing, I don't think I would have ended my career at Miami. I started as a redshirt freshman for 4 games when Craig Erickson broke his hand in the middle of our 1989 national championship season. Broke the school record for passing my second start, and had a pretty good 4 game stretch that I think I could have taken to, any other university in today's game, and they would have been like, "We want him. We got, 3 years left of eligibility," and it would have, been a nice payday for me. But would that have ended with me winning the Heisman and winning 2 national championships? Probably not. But that's just how the game is today. So I think there's got to be, I don't know, people say guardrails. I think it's got to be some kind of common sense on the transferring thing. I think, I don't know if there's a way you can, I guess, have some teeth with the academic side and say, listen, if you're not making, I think when I played, you had to make progress towards graduation to be eligible. And, we knew that as players. If we didn't, take, I think it was 24 credit, it was 8 classes a year. If you didn't pass 8 classes a year and you didn't have a certain GPA, you weren't eligible. And maybe the NC2A can enforce some of those rules. But I think the whole, I get it. Your generation has dealt with COVID and distance learning and Zoom learning, but we have institutions, major players, and fight for a national championship, and players don't have to go to class. They don't even have to show up physically at a classroom, and they can, do what we're doing now and do it from their home. They can do it from the coach's office. They can do it from whatever. I don't think that's, I think you should be going to class and that, but you know, but I think there should be some kind of general enforcement or general rules, like everybody drives by the speed limit of 70 miles an hour or less. I, that's just a common sense approach. Now, how we get there is going to be interesting. Obviously, you got some conferences want a 2014 playoff. The SEC supposedly doesn't want to go to 24, and nowhere in that discussion is there ever is 24 teams in the playoff good for the game? And I would say no, because if you're 24th ranked team in the country, you've probably got 4 losses and you have no chance of winning a national championship. They can, you say what they want. They can make a run. They can make some noise. You know, they don't have any chance of winning a national championship. There's a difference between a team that lost 4 games and a team that lost 1 or 2. And I think that if we go to 24, you diminish what the regular season means. You'll have more of, in the NBA, they call it load management. The NFL, you get, hey, we got home field throughout. We're sitting our starting quarterback the last game. We're sitting our stars out the last game. And that just, to me, that you shouldn't have that opportunity. And then, besides that, to win a national championship, would Indiana have to win 16 games last year? I mean, people don't realize the NFL season used to be only 17 games with 2 buys. It's like, okay, now you got 16 games. How do you stay healthy as a player, through 16 games? And then, I forgot, you're now playing through 2 semesters. So
Yeah, it's pretty crazy what's going
yeah,
on.
it's just to me, it never once. The question is, oh, we can make it work and we can make more money. Okay, sure, but is it good for the game? And I would say no.
Yeah, there's an argument. It's not great for the players either, right? Because if they're not getting their degree and not going to the NFL, and not all of them are getting paid either, then that's an issue too, right? And
Oh, 100%.
with the playoffs, what do you think is that good sweet spot? Right? Like 24 is too much. Do you think 12 is good? Do you think 8 is good, or what do you think?
I think how it is right now with 12, but I think I would probably remove the caveat that are in there right now. With the schools that are, Notre Dame, I thought, they were ranked in the top 12, but they didn't make the playoffs because certain, representatives from smaller conferences had to have representation. So if you still want, the group of five champion to be part of that, and you can't do it at 12, go to 16. I'll give you that because I think at 16, you can still have a couple bye weeks at the end of the season. You can still somewhat try to get healthy. Um, I think that, with any of the expansion, and even if it's not expanded, if it stays at 12, get rid of conference championship games. We didn't have them when I was in school. I don't think they were created as another point and another way to make money. And I think that you had a couple of years ago with Georgia, they lost. They lose Carson Beck in their conference championship game. They don't win a national. They didn't win the national championship that year. So, I think that those are things that every time you step on the field, it can happen. But if you expanded, let's say you go to 24. Let's say you make the SEC championship game. Okay, it's not going to matter. And if you look at this last season we just had, the only conference championship game that mattered was the Big 12 because it kicked BYU out of the playoff. That was it. It didn't matter that Alabama lost. It didn't matter. Miami wasn't even in the ACC national championship. The games did not matter one bit. Duke, who won the conference championship, and you're like, okay, they're the conference champion. If you want expansion and you want equal representation, isn't the team, however, I would say, however cockamamie rules that you figured out Duke at four losses or five losses was it should be in the conference championship game. If that's what you did as a conference and they win that game unexpectedly, then they should have been in the playoff. Now, would they had a chance? No, they wouldn't have had a chance to win a national championship. But, they won by the ACC's rules. And I think that, if we're going to expand it all, and even at 12, I say get rid of the conference championship games and go at it from there. And if you stay at 12, get rid of, hey, this team has to be in. Just say, here's the top 12. But if you want, that representation from, the AAC, which I understand that it's a very good conference. All right, go to 16. And we're not having any stipulations. We don't have to have four teams, six teams, seven teams from our conference get in the playoffs. Go out there, play the games, and where the rankings lie and where the playoff committee decides, you have those 16 teams, and then you create a playoff bracket, and you do it, and you hopefully, I would say, incorporate the smaller bowl games and use those as playoff sites, and then you let it eat and see who wins.
Jeez, yeah, I think you should become the athletic director. Huh. Man, that's a
We got an
great
opening in
idea.
Miami now, right?
Yeah, they do. They just let go of Radovich. Speaking of Miami football, um, and quarterbacks in general, do you think that like Carson Beck and Cam Ward and this Darian Mensah have a chance to be stars in the NFL? And then question number two, do you think the quarterback play has changed now as to when you played, or do you think it's more or less the same?
Well, I think it's changed some. I think the players that play it are more, they're relied on more of their athleticism, and what I mean, they have to be a runner. In the majority of offenses in today's college game, um, schematically, and what a one back or no back offense does in today's game is the same schematically that I did, 35 years ago. So, that's the same. The progressions, the reads are all the same. It's just, the quarterbacks today are relied on athleticism, a lot better athletes, I would say, because they've been taught, hey, you got to run, you got to run. we're going to do the RPO and things like that. We didn't do the RPO. I mean, we just threw it from the quarterback was supposed to operate the scheme and throw it. And I think it's very difficult to do both. And that's, you see there have been a lot of guys or that have gotten to the NFL that are very good throwers and passers, but when you do both, you get tired. And if you're not, and you look at the kind of shape Lamar Jackson has to be in, he's by far the best conditioned athlete on their team. There isn't a doubt because you couldn't do what he's doing, to be able to, make a run for 20 yards on a broken play, get back in the huddle, lower your heart rate, tell 10 other guys what to do, and then go through your mental progressions at the line of scrimmage of the next play, all of those things that have to go on if you're not in the best shape on the field. As far as I think, Cam Ward arm talent was off the charts. First time I saw him throw a football, I was just like, wow. And I thought why either the NFL scouts had not seen him or had not paid attention to him. Because I didn't need one time, as a quarterback, I can watch a guy throw once and be like, wow, that guy's, he's great, he's good, he's got, unbelievable arm talent. And I only needed one chance to see him. He had unbelievable arm talent. Carson, I think, coming off elbow injury, I think that affected him. I think it affected him all season last year. Hopefully his elbow keeps getting stronger, but he's got the size, he's got the experience, he's got all the physical tools, and I think it's going to come down to whether he gets an opportunity on the field to play. Darian, I've seen him a little bit, but it's been his highlights from Duke. Very talented kid, loves pushing it down the field, and which I like. So I think that I think as long as he continually improves, he'll get a real good opportunity in the next level.
Very interesting. And just a few more questions here. You played with Mario Cristobal, I believe, right?
Same recruiting class, same 5 years. Yep.
Yeah. And what was he like as a player? And what do you think of his coaching philosophy?
As a player, he's a very good offensive lineman. He was one of my tackles. I think he got banged up our senior year a little bit with a knee issue, but always one of the hardest workers on the field. His older brother Lewis, who was also a guard for us, and they were I guess they drove each other. They were very hard on each other to continue to improve and be the best that they could be. And so no, we were good friends, good teammates, for our time at Miami. Um, Coaching philosophy, I think he has evolved. I think he's gotten better. I thought he's done a great job since he's come here to Miami. Um, I think that he learned a lot from Coach Saban when his time at Alabama. And I think that, his relentless pursuit in recruiting is the difference. I mean, it comes down to the players that are on the field. And, and people always say, well, is it the players? Is it the coaches? Listen, it's always the guys that you trot out there. The 11 on offense, 11 on defense, or 11 on special teams. And I think that Mario has done a phenomenal job of getting the best and the brightest young kids, into this university, whether it's through the transfer portal, whether it's through, recruiting and developing young players from their high school seasons. And no, I think it's been really, really fun to watch as he got us to the championship game this year.
Yeah, no, there's some great things to come from the University of Miami football, and it should be exciting to see. Now, this is the very last question. Who would you put on the Mount Rushmore of all-time University of Miami football players?
All-time Miami football players. You know what? I was asked this and I didn't want to offend anybody. So what I would say is this: 1983, 19, 1989, 1991, and 2001. I'd pick our four of our five national champions and just say pick a player off those teams. Or you could go pick three of those teams and Ted Hendricks. If I had to pick one player, the first guy on there is Ted Hendricks. He's the only three-time All-American. He changed the game. I mean, I can only imagine with being 6'8" and a rush defensive end in today's game, what that would garner. I mean, he might be making $50 million a year because he couldn't be blocked in college, and he was the most dominant force that this school ever had. And I think that yeah, he would be my number one. But to me, is not the I guess pick an individual. I would say just pick four of the national championship teams, and you know what? If you want to pick somebody off each one of those teams, go ahead and do it. But our Mount Rushmore should be our teams that won national championships.
All right, yeah, that's a very interesting list there. I mean, there's so many good players. I can see why it'd be hard to choose. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Toretta. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great day.
You're welcome. I appreciate it. Thanks, Jacob.